So what if you could let your spirit speak and be your guiding light? And you could...
You are listening to Turn Your Soul On Radio. I am your host and visionary doctor, Dr. Brandy Victory, and my mission is to assist high-achieving women in closing the gap between feeling unfulfilled to living a life on fire. It is time, ladies, to champion our own lives and turn ourselves on. This is Living Victoriously, ladies. This is how you turn your soul on.
Hello, you gorgeous soul awakened beings. Thank you for being here. It is my utmost pleasure to be with you here today, and I'm very excited. We're going to talk a little bit about how to tap into the magic of life, how to get yourself into that place where synchronicities are all around you and you can't help but know that your life is so on purpose and that your purpose is a yummy experience that you wouldn't want to be any other way. This is the life I think we're all looking for. And this is just a little bit about how I get myself there and a few questions that may inspire you to find that place within yourself. And before we get started, I just want to say thank you for sharing this with your friends. Send this to as many girls that you know as possible. Send this to anyone who you feel like needs a hand up, who you feel like is like looking for another way or feeling a little bit uninspired in their life, and they're just needing some refreshment to help them awaken to something greater within themselves. That's what this show's about. And if you're getting anything out of my shows, I would just so appreciate it if you share them. And I also want to thank our sponsor, Purium Superfoods. Purium Superfoods is the sponsor of the 10-day transformation program that I'm currently doing. And I am so happy to be sharing my journey with you. If you're interested in following along on the day-to-day journey of my 10-day transformation, check me out on YouTube. Just subscribe to my channel there, Dr. Brandy Victory, and you'll be able to see them. I'm going to do some lives on there, but they'll be recorded, so you'll be able to see what I'm enjoying, what I'm not enjoying, what life brings me during this transformation process. So in the last episode, if you're kind of a little bit more interested in why I actually do the cleanse, I spoke of that in the last episode. So feel free to check that out. Or if you're interested in maybe doing a group cleanse with me, I'll be doing one in June, at the beginning of June. So check out the website, drbrandyvictory.com/10-day, 10-day, 10-day. And you can learn all about it right there. And if you have any questions, just reach out. So on with the show. All right, ladies. So I'm just curious, where do you go to remind yourself that life is magical? To remind yourself of the synchronicities of life and bring yourself into attunement or alignment so that this magical way of being reveals itself to you in the world. I personally go to Harbin Hot Springs. It is my sacred sanctuary, and it always, never fails, always brings me back to myself. I'm so grateful that I'm actually have been able to go there last week when I was in California, and as I was there, I was being reminded that's where my inspiration comes from, not from Harbin, but from stopping for a minute, taking myself to a new environment that opens me up to a more inspired place. Inspiration can obviously come at the gym or when you're working hard, things like that. But, much less likely because your spirit needs to be heard. This is what inspiration is. Inspirited. And your spirit wants to be heard. In order to hear what your spirit is trying to say to you, you have to be present with it. You have to slow down. You have to allow it to speak, and you have to allow yourself to hear it. So many of my patients come to me with the story, quote unquote, I'm not heard. And then we work on the emotional aspect and clear the pattern out of the field and reset their nervous system around that particular story, the I'm not heard story. And the question arises, how are you listening to yourself? So if you're not being heard, likely you're not listening. And maybe you're not listening to the person that you feel like you're not being heard by, but less likely than you're not listening to your spirit speak. So what if you could let your spirit speak and be your guiding light? And you could actually do whatever it is that you wanted, that your spirit guided you towards. Like, you have the ability to do that. You have the right to do that. As a matter of fact, I would say it's your utmost responsibility to do that. But we have all these storylines and excuses that many of you may be throwing up in this very moment. Like, I have kids, I'm married, I have to have this job, I can't do whatever I want. Like, those are stories. And if you just take a higher perspective, you can see that those stories, maybe they have some validity because yes, you have kids and yes, you're married and maybe you need to work, but maybe there's another way. So what if you actually knew what you wanted? Because I think for most of us, the things that you likely want are simply the opposite of whatever's driving you crazy right now. So maybe your kids are driving you crazy. You're like, God, I can't take this anymore. Or maybe, you're not in communication with your husband right now. The communication is kind of lacking there and you want better communication. Or maybe, who knows what, but maybe there's something else that you're wanting beyond that, that's not just the opposite of whatever's driving you crazy. Maybe there's something deeper that you actually have a soul desire for. When we're fed up and exasperated and tired, it's typically our ego that is running the show and telling us what we want and things like that. But what if there was a way to let go of the fed up? What if there were a way to align to your authentic truth and do that? What if you were actually living your authentic truth? What does it even mean to live your authentic truth? It's a good question. And where I feel like I have to begin when I find myself out of alignment with my truth is stopping and meditating, going to a place like Harbin Hot Springs. There's other places. I also like Valley View Hot Springs. But those are two of my biggies, or just go out in the forest or go down by the river or go to a beach. Like, these are the places that I go to get back to myself and to align to my authenticity so that I can live my truth. Maybe your truth is, I'd like to stay with my husband if we had better communication. And I invite you to listen. Listen to your soul. Listen to the guidance that's there. Maybe it's start a communication course. Maybe it's go to therapy. And then every single time that comes up, I hear, yeah, but he won't. So what? You can. This is about you. You raising yourself up so that you can be a better person and come at this issue from a better place. Or maybe your soul says, hey, why don't you start painting? Or hey, why don't you start yoga or dance class? Or hey, maybe why don't you just go work out in the yard for now? And whatever the guidance is, you have to know that it's right on time, that it's absolutely perfect, that it's exactly what you need to be doing to live your authentic truth. Maybe just going and working in the yard or going to a dance class allows you to create space from the situation, allows you to tap into your creative flow, your essence, your truth, and then you easily or more easily find the words to bring to the table so that you can have this conversation with your husband. It's not your husband that's the problem necessarily. Well, obviously you can make a bad choice and people do change, but maybe there's a way for you to get on board with each other, a way to become friends again and see life through each other's eyes. See, seeing life through each other's eyes is so important, even if it's just a friend or a boyfriend or a parent or someone on the street. This is called empathy. And in order for us to really tap into our empathy, we need to create space for ourselves to feel. And if we're caught up in the day-to-day grind, taking the kids to school, paying the taxes, getting home, cooking dinner, and doing it all over again, there's no space to feel. There's no space to listen to your spirit. So everyone has their own story of what's going on. And if you don't get real with yourself and get to a place where you can put it out on the table, there's way too much room for misunderstanding, which leads to unhappiness. And then people part without ever knowing the truth of how the other person is feeling. It's a vicious cycle, and it's a little vortex that can just drive you down. And if you're listening to your heart and you're following its guidance, really, not doing what you think you need to be doing, not doing what your mom said you should do, not doing what your girlfriend said you should do, but doing what your heart, your spirit says you should do or invites you to do. It never says you should, does it? It has an invitation, and we can choose to accept the invitation or we can choose to leave it behind. But I invite you right now to listen in and choose that invitation and follow your heart's guidance. Maybe your truth is, my kids are driving me crazy. Well, I have a lot of moms who are in that place right now, and we've been working on helping release the pattern from the field. And once we release that pattern from the field, the physical changes. That is what the work is about that I do. And it works. I mean, it's so amazing. I actually was at an event last week in town, and one of my patients came up to me, and she's like so excited. And I was just like, oh, what's up with her, And she's like, you won't believe this, which of course I did because I see this all the time. But she's like, the day after I saw you, I had the most wonderful day with my daughter. We went and had dinner at a restaurant. She picked the restaurant. We colored together. We hung out all day, and we had so much fun. And that was like completely opposite of what she came in with, like just the week before. She was like, oh my God, I'm so frustrated. I don't even know what to do with her anymore. And she's being a bitch and, all the things. So, it's really, really amazing. And it's important to remember that everything starts within you. Everything starts within you, and you are not your body. Your body is a vessel that carries you around so you can experience life. And whenever we get jaded or have a belief about something, it imprints onto the field, and that's where our experiences get created from. They get created from the field. So if you've got some kind of negative imprint on your field, and you'll know that because you'll have a negative experience in your life, you may want to consider talking to me so that we can clear that out. I work with people all over the country doing this work, and it's so profound. I mean, I can't tell you how awesome it is to see relationships and lives change every single day of my life. So it's time to come home, ladies. Come back to yourself. Come back to your truth. Come back to your soul's yearning and follow that. Follow the whisper that guides you to the right words to connect with your family, your husband, your children, your friends. By letting go of the preconditioning, the beliefs you've been holding on to that keep you and them actually stuck in a rut. If you're holding on to a belief about a situation that involves another person, you're creating a situation for that person. So when you begin to let go of your preconceived notions and beliefs around certain situations that involve other people, you give space for those other people to have a new experience. It's all about letting go for the greater good and saying yes to your truth, to the part of yourself that believes in you and your dream to have a joyful, loving, fulfilling life on all levels. I invite you to take time out for yourself today. Go out in nature, take a hike, be alone, be with yourself, be with your thoughts, listen to your heart. And when you notice the self-doubt, the negativity, the negative self-talk, simply ask, but what if? What if? What if that weren't true? And then you can even take it to another level and ask your heart what it would like, what it would prefer. Is that true from your heartfelt, most deepest place? I think you'll find the answer. That any of the negativity that you're holding on to and telling yourself, is absolutely out of alignment with your truth. And then look for synchronicities. Synchronicities are everywhere. And it's fascinating to watch them. I feel like I see them sometimes more often than others. And I have realized that when I am not seeing them, or when I'm in that kind of drudging through the day place, that sluggish place, that just taking care of business, getting it done place, and not making any space for my spirit. But when I was at Harbin last week, and after that whole experience, even the whole week while I was in California was just, oh my God, so amazing. Because I took myself out of my rhythm, out of my rhythmic space and patterns around here, and found a new way, right? So there was it was just the craziest stuff. Like I had this one experience where I bought a bar of chocolate. This is, let's see, I can't remember what kind it was, but I remember the flavor was espresso bean dark chocolate. And the packaging had almost like tiger stripes on it. It was like black and orange tiger stripes on the packaging. Like maybe it's a new packaging because I'd never seen it packaged like that before. And okay, big deal. So I'm buying this chocolate, right? And now I'm driving to Harbin, and this 18-wheeler is coming from the other direction. And lo and behold, guess how the front of the truck was painted? It was freaking tiger stripe, exactly. Not almost exactly, but exactly like the packaging of my chocolate. And I was like, well, that's freaking weird. That's really, really weird. But I enjoyed it because I was like, ooh, that's cool. That means I'm headed in the right direction, right? I'm headed in the right direction. And so when I was there was this beautiful woman who had amazing green eyes, and they had like this gold ring around the outside of her eyes. They were just gorgeous. And she walks up to me and she's like, oh, honey, you have such beautiful eyes. And I was like, wow, so do you. Oh my gosh, wow, very cool, right? I just felt like I was looking into the eyes of myself, the eyes of my soul. It was just so, so beautiful. The whole Harbin thing was kind of an accident anyway, So I say this is another synchronicity because I didn't even know they were open. They burned down like 4 years ago. The whole thing burned down, and I was devastated. It was, it's my sanctuary burned down. It's like your church burning down. Okay. If you go to church, oh my gosh, this is where I go to find myself, and now it's gone. It's erased off the earth. And so it was really, really a sad situation 4 years ago. And I got wind as I'm getting ready to go to California that this is opened back up. And I was just like, what? Oh my gosh, I have to make it there. And so I called on a couple of my girlfriends to ask them if they had any camping gear, because they don't have cabins or anything yet. They're still building, but they have the pools and you can camp. And so even though both of these girls came through with camping gear deluxe, and one of them's not even a camper. She got camping gear from her friend. Another one's been misplaced because she had a house fire, and for her to find anything was by the grace of God. I mean, it's crazy. So I'm like, oh boy, so I'm going to Harbin, and I get this camping gear, right? And it just kept going and going and going. Like there was so many synchronicities, and still they're just unfolding in front of me. Like I helped someone with something, and I personally like to keep about $250 cash in my wallet, just to always have some cash on me. And I had counted it a few days ago and realized, oh shoot, I'm low. I need to get some money out of the bank. And I needed about $100. So then I helped someone with something, and she gave me an envelope and said, hey, thank you so much. And when I opened it, guess what? $100. Like I was just like, oh my gosh, this is so great. I mean, it's amazing. Like when you're in the flow and you're on fire and you're on purpose and you're following your heart's guidance and you're following that whisper within you, then these are the kinds of things that happen. I could go on and on and on about all the different synchronicities that are showing up right now. I'm just going to leave you with that because I think you get the picture, and I want you to just take a minute to look around your own life and look at how Spirit is speaking to you. Look at how synchronicities are showing up, and just notice that if this happens, or when this happens for you, because I know it does, that are you finding yourself living a more juicy, fulfilling life when these synchronicities are happening around you? And if you're not finding them right now, what is it that you can do for yourself to start seeing them again? Do you have a sacred sanctuary that you can go to reconnect with yourself? Or can you take yourself on a little trip or on an overnight somewhere to be alone and be with your thoughts? Or can you simply go outside in nature and sit by a tree and take your journal and just be with your own soul and see what comes of that? So, ladies, thank you so much for being here and for allowing me to just share this greatness that comes through my life with you. And may it inspire you to do whatever it takes to turn your soul on. Thank you for tuning in to Turn Your Soul On Radio. If you're finding yourself living a more inspired life because of this show, help spread the light. Share this episode with every woman you know looking to live their lives a little more on fire. I'd also be grateful if you headed over to iTunes and left a heartfelt review, which really helps the growth of the show. I'd also like to invite you to deepen your connection with our community by joining our private Facebook group, Turn Your Soul On. And if you have any other questions, feel free to shoot us an email at admin@drbrandyvictory.com. Thanks so much for being here today, and I'll talk to you next time. May your soul be turned on.
This podcast is for information purposes only. Dr. Brandy Victory is not a medical doctor, and the views and statements expressed on this podcast are not medical advice. This podcast, including Dr. Brandy Victory and the producers, disclaim responsibility from any possible adverse effects from the use of information contained herein. Opinions of guests are their own, and this podcast does not endorse or accept responsibility for statements made by guests. This podcast does not make any representations or warranties about guest qualifications or credibility. This podcast may contain paid endorsements and advertisements for products or services. Individuals on this podcast may have a direct or indirect financial interest in products or services referred to herein. If you think you have a medical problem, consult a licensed physician.